What's up, guys? How's it going? You know, I've been playing guitar a long time. Okay, a long time. And I've heard these lies and these lies and these lies. And the thing is, when you have guys like Guthrie Trapp repeating these lies, you have a whole new, generation of people, of young men, young guitar players who listen to Guthrie Trapp and admire his guitar playing and thinks he knows what he's talking about. He doesn't. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The thing is if Guthrie plays a lick, right, and then he goes, well, this is how I did this lick, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. 100%. No doubt. Have nothing to say about the guy's guitar playing. And the other thing I want to tell you is, look, I'm using Guthrie Trapp as an example. I don't have anything against the guy. I don't know the guy. Never met him. Don't know anything about him. Okay, all I know is that he's a Nashville guitar player, and all these younger players go, wow, Guthrie Trapp, Guthrie Trapp. So I'm telling you that I've been playing guitar as long as Guthrie Trapp. I've heard all these lies as long as Guthrie Trapp has. Okay, except the only thing is I can see through them. He can't. So what he's doing is he's propelling the myth. He's propelling the myth. And I'm here to break the myths. I'm here to dispel the myths. I'm here to get to the bottom of the bullshit. Okay? Now, first things first.
This thing, what is this? This is a real 1960?
This is a 1960 335.
See, he's got to say it's a 1960. Zach and Guthrie and Tom and all these guys, they always got to say, well, what year their guitar is. You know, it's like, nobody ever hands you a 1960 ES 335 and goes, you know, here's a guitar, check it out, play it. Tell me what you think. Nobody. Nobody. There's an old joke. You know who there's 100 people in a room. You know who the vegan is? The one who's telling everybody they're vegan. Yeah, it's the same thing with these guitars. It's like, how do you know the guy who's playing a vintage guitar? He's telling you it's a vintage guitar. It's like they have to say something about the guitar. Nobody ever hands them a guitar and just goes, hey man, here's a 335. They go, it's a 1960 335. That's a 1959 335. They never go, here's a 335. You notice how nobody hands a guy a 1997 335 and goes, hey man, is that 335 from 97? You know, what makes this, that's what I'm saying is like what I'm saying is there's already baked in this idea that a 1960 is better in their mind before they ever touch it. That's why they have to qualify it as a 1960. It's already baked into the equation. And I just saw this on a forum the other day. Some kid wrote, apparently a younger guy wrote, man, I've always heard these vintage guitars they're all so much better. This is the kind of person I'm making the video for. They're not. And trust me, this 1960 guitar, if I took 15 ES335s from different eras, okay, reissues, 80s, they've been making this guitar nonstop. They'd never stopped production of this guitar. 72, 92, 2002, 2012, 2015, 2025. If I took 15 of those guitars, right, and I took a 1960 and a 1958 or a 1959 and mixed them in there, you could never pick them out. You sonically could never tell the difference between a 97 and a 1960 ES35. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it. That's the part that really just, one of the things that gets me about this. So they got a 1960, okay? I'm not impressed.
You know, for the price of this guitar, I could buy like 20 regular guitars, you know.
Guthrie's right about this, by the way. And when he says 20 guitars, he means 20 nice guitars. I mean, you know, $3,000 guitars. You know, because these 1960s run like 50, 60 grand. So you could buy 20, you could buy used custom shops. You might even be able to buy 30 used custom shops. You know, you could buy a used custom shop, very nice guitar. You could buy a top-of-the-line Fender. You could buy a top-of-the-line Gibson. You could buy a Gibson custom shop used. You could buy a Gibson reissue, a 1960 reissue used. You could buy 20 nice, and when he says, 20 guitars, he means 20 good guitars, like absolutely lifetime guitars, but totally dialed in, excellent sounding, great instruments, boutique guitars. You could buy a Collings guitar. You could buy a CP Thornton guitar. You could buy there's all kinds of. You could buy a real nice Paul Reed Smith. You could buy all kinds of guitars for the price of this one guitar. You know what the other thing is? You could buy one nice guitar and have 50 grand in the bank.
It is amazing to pick up an instrument that where the wood is really dry.
This is another lie. The wood is really dry. The wood, the wood. The wood is no less or more dry than any other wood in any other guitar. It's not, because the moisture content of a guitar can be measured, by the way. Moisture content of wood can be measured, okay? And when you look at these PRS guitars, these Gibson guitars, they have to have the wood at a certain level of moisture so that the guitar is workable, right? They can work on the wood. And if it's too low, let's say this is 0, if it's too low, the wood cracks when they work on it, when they make it. So when they're cutting into it, it'll break. When they're forming the neck, it'll break if it doesn't have enough moisture in it. So first of all, you have to have some moisture in the wood to make it stay together. And this is even true of old guitars. If an old guitar, look at a violin, that's an acoustic instrument. If it dries out, it will literally crack. It will break. It's the same thing with a modern day guitar, with this 1960. If this guitar gets dried out, it will break. You don't want it to break. So when it's not breaking, it's at a certain point of moisture, and it's not any more or less than any other guitar. Okay? And once again, I challenge you, I dare someone like Guthrie Trapp to put a quote-unquote dried-out wood guitar against 10, 12 other guitars, and you pick out the one that's dried out. You can't hear it. You can't hear a guitar that's dried out and identify it as being dried out from the sonic value of it, from the way it sounds. And when you're playing guitars, the way it sounds is real important.
And they cared about building instruments back then,
This is absolute garbage. This is another cope. This is another cope. This is another trying to justify it. You're starting off with this idea that this guitar is better than any other guitar. That's one of the problems with these guys. They always start off with the premise that it's better than anything. That's why that kid typed, well, I've always heard they're better than any, so you're starting off with the idea it's better than anything. And then you got to justify it along the way. And one way he's justifying is people cared. Oh, these people cared. These people cared about this instrument. So it's a much better built instrument. Okay, Guthrie, let me tell you something, buddy. Okay, you need to wake up. Okay, you need to wake up. If you think a dude in a Gibson factory in 1960 is any different from a dude in a Gibson factory in 2026, you're nuts. You're crazy. Guys in 1960 they're in a factory. This is a factory-made instrument. Okay, this is not like a handmade item that a guy made for 30 years that has his son next to him and he's teaching his son every little thing to make this object by hand. This is a factory. These are stations that this guitar goes through. Right now, I believe it's 27. I could be wrong, but there's 27 different people that touch this guitar to make it happen, right? Back then, let's just say there was less. Let's say there was 10, right? It wasn't one guy working on the guitar and caring about it so much. Everybody was doing their job. They're doing a job. How many people just do their job? How many people on the planet just do their job? Hey man, I'm just doing my job. You don't have to care about the guitar. You don't have to care about your job. You are there to do a job at the Gibson factory. Okay? You are getting paid not that much money back then, by the way. You're a cog in the machine. You know, let's say 10 guys touch this guitar. So you're telling me that every single one of those guys cared about the guitar so much that day. What if they didn't? What if a guy just broke up with his girlfriend and he really didn't care? He showed up at work and he was just angry. What if another guy just his dog got killed? He doesn't care about the guitar. He's thinking about his dog while he's doing the little work that he's doing on the 1960 guitar. He's thinking about his dog that died. What about the guy that doesn't want to work there? He doesn't want to have a job at Gibson. He has dreams about being, a financier on Wall Street. He doesn't want to work at Gibson. He just has a job. It's the only thing he can get. You think he cares about the guitar? He doesn't care about it. To make some kind of mental leap that everybody that touched a guitar to make it in 1960 cared about it so much more than anybody through any other era is just, no. No.
I love an instrument that has some character. Newer instruments can have some character. They just have to be, beaten a little bit, played and worn in.
There's a lot to be said about what he just mentioned, and I agree with the guy, okay, by the way. But you know what the best guitar to get worn in? Do you know what the best way to wear a guitar in is? By you playing it. By you playing it, making it yours. There is something very special, okay, about buying a new guitar. Think about it like this. You ever driven a car off the lot? You ever driven a brand new car off the lot and it's yours? And you're the first guy that ever owned that. You're the first guy that ever owned that car. You drive it off the lot. It's got 22 miles on it. You know that feeling? It's the same with the guitar, man. You can pull a guitar off the wall that nobody's ever played except you. Or you can order a guitar from Fender straight from the factory. And it's yours. There's a lot to be said about that, man. No, I agree with the guy about the character and this and that, but there is a lot to be said about you getting a guitar and you making that guitar yours. The other part about that nobody ever mentions is a lot of this guitars getting beat. They're getting abused. They're getting abused. You set it down, you knock it over, you chip it, you put your cigarette out on it, you dump beer on it. You know what I'm saying? Some guy kicks it at a gig. Your dog pisses on it. Whatever. And then you get the guitar and you go, wow, it's really worn in. Well, it smells like dog piss, but it's worn in.
I mean, everything's mass produced. It's the same with everything. I mean, if you look at anything that was built back in the 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s, maybe even, things were built to last more than they were built to make a profit. And like, however you want to interpret that, it's just the truth. I mean,
this is where he talks about built to last instead of make a profit. No, see, no, absolutely not. Once again, this is the reason why I'm making these videos, because you have a guy like Guthrie Trapp and you hear him say this and you go, well, he must be right because he can rip, he can play guitar good. He's absolutely wrong, completely wrong. Okay, first of all, this era that he's talking about is called mid-century. When you collect stuff, whether it be furniture, tables, guitars, pens, pen stands, cars, suits, hats, whatever, lighters. This is records. This is called mid-century stuff, what he's talking about. He's talking about mid-century. And the only reason why anything was built better back then, if you believe that it was built better, is because we had just come out of World War II. 1945 was the end of World War II. So in 1946, guess what? You had all these factories, right, that were just primed up and all these materials that were made for military industrial grade production of Jeeps, of tanks, of airplanes, of bombs, of munitions, of guns. Real heavy duty type stuff. That's what they had to work with. And they had all these factories built. So then they just tooled the factory to make a toaster or something, and the toaster was heavy duty. But to absolutely believe and then state that you think they made it better regardless of the profit. Let me get his exact words here. Hold on.
things were built to last more than they were built to make a profit.
Things were built to last more than they were built to make a profit. No, absolutely not. There has never been, or there's very rarely ever been, any American business that has produced anything at all, that is not produced for profit. Every single guitar made in 1951 was made to make a profit. Every guitar that was made by a factory in 1960 was made to make a profit. They didn't make it good to make it good. They made something to make money. And Guthrie is absolutely delusional if he believes somehow, well, they just wanted to make a good product. They didn't care about money or profit. Of course they did. Gibson was a subsidiary of Chicago Music at this particular point. There was something called Chicago Music Supply that owned Gibson in 1960. And Chicago Music Supply was making money off of Gibson, making money. They had a quota. These guys who cared so much about making the guitars, they had a quota. They had to put out X amount of guitars a day. Why? Not because they cared about making it so great, because they cared about money. They had to make money. They weren't making it just to make it good. Nobody in American history, no company that's ever been a business has just made a product to make it good and never cared about profit. You couldn't exist. You'd go bankrupt. You wouldn't be able to make any products. Because you start a business, I'm just making this business to make something good. I don't care if I make any money. I'm just making it to last. Okay, a year later, you're done. That doesn't happen. It wouldn't even get to a year because a bank wouldn't even give you any money to start your business. Nobody give you any money to start your business. They say, well, what do you want to do? You're trying to make a profit here? How much money do you think you're going to make? Oh, I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about money. I'm just trying to make a product that lasts. That's it. You would never get in the game. And like I said, the only reason why that you have this idea that things were made better is the industrial complex, the industrial base for America just came out of World War II. So you have these really, really heavy duty machines, these really heavy duty steels, these really heavy duty everything, but you put them together in a product to make a profit, not to make it last. You didn't care if it lasted. You cared if you made a profit. And if it lasts, great. Look at Leo Fender when he made the Telecaster. This is a perfect example. When Leo Fender made the Telecaster, if you think about the bridge, the saddles, right? There's 3 of them. They're barrel saddles. There's 3 of them. And then there's 3 screws that hold that in. So there's 2 strings on each barrel, right? You think he did that for sound quality? Do you think he did that so it would make something last? Do you think he did that because it was because he cared so much about the sound of the guitar? Of course not. It's simple mathematics. If you make 3 parts with 3 screws, you're making half as many as if you had to make 1 for each string, meaning 6 parts and then 6 screws. It was an economic decision. Had nothing to do with sound quality, had nothing to do with making something last, had nothing to do with Leo Fender caring about anything except profit. So you have 3 barrels and you have 3 screws. That's half as much as 6 barrels and 6 screws. You have 3 saddles and 3 screws. That's half as much as 6 saddles and 6 screws. So we're going to save some money, guys. So many of these decisions in these huge corporations have always, and not that Leo was a huge corporation, but he was a for-profit business. So many decisions by these for-profit businesses, which is almost every business that's ever made a guitar, is based on economics. And if you listen to Tim Shaw talk about Gibson, he says the same thing. These decisions are made on economics, not made on quality, not made on sound quality, not made on caring, not made upon that we're going to make something that lasts. It's made on an economic decision so how the company is going to make profit so we can stay afloat and make more guitars. So, Guthrie, Trapp, and these guys, Guthrie doesn't know that much about vintage guitars. He admits that. Okay, so let me tell you something, Guthrie. They ain't that great, and you're wasting your money. Okay? All right, guys, that's it. I'll see you next time.